What would you do if you saw a decorated war hero being humiliated in public? Would you stand up? Would you walk away? Or would you do what most people do? Pull out your phone and record it? Well, what happened next in this small Texas diner will restore your faith in brotherhood, honor, and the unbreakable bonds forged in combat. A Purple Heart recipient was about to be mocked by a group of leather-clad bikers who had no idea they were about to face the wrath of an entire Army Ranger unit. 25 minutes. That's all it took for justice to roll into that parking lot like thunder on wheels. Stay with me, because this story will give you chills and remind you why you should never, ever disrespect those who bled for our freedom. Welcome to Honor Echoes, where we share the untold stories of our nation's heroes, the men and women who sacrificed everything so we could sleep safely at night. If you believe these stories need to be heard, hit that subscribe button right now, because what you're about to witness is exactly why we honor our veterans every single day. Let me take you back to a scorching hot Saturday afternoon in Killeen, Texas, just outside Fort Hood. The year was 2019, and I was driving my pickup through town when I decided to stop at Mel's Country Diner, one of those classic American establishments where the coffee's always fresh, the pie's homemade, and everyone knows everyone. What I didn't know was that I was about to witness something that would change my perspective on respect, brotherhood, and the true meaning of having someone's back. As I pulled into the gravel parking lot, I noticed an unusual gathering. There were about 8 Harley-Davidsons lined up like soldiers, their chrome gleaming in the afternoon sun. Now, I've got nothing against bikers. Some of my best friends ride, and many are veterans themselves. As a guy who spent time around military bases my whole life, I know the difference between good people on bikes and troublemakers. But this particular group had that edge to them, that swagger that said they owned whatever space they occupied. Inside the diner, the atmosphere was tense. I could feel it the moment I walked through that screen door. There, sitting alone in a corner booth, was a man who immediately caught my attention. He was maybe 65 years old, wearing a simple button-down shirt and jeans. Nothing fancy, nothing flashy. But pinned to his shirt was something that made my blood run cold when I realized what was about to happen. A Purple Heart medal. For those who don't know, the Purple Heart isn't just any military decoration. It's awarded to those who were wounded or killed in action while serving their country. This medal represents blood spilled, pain endured, and sacrifices made that most of us can't even begin to comprehend. The man wearing it had earned it the hard way, and he wore it with quiet dignity. The bikers had noticed him too. I watched as their leader, a massive guy with arms covered in tattoos and a beard that would make a lumberjack jealous, pointed toward the veterans' table. The group started snickering, making comments loud enough for everyone to hear. "Look at Grandpa over there, playing dress-up with his little medal," one of them said. Another chimed in, "Probably bought that thing at a flea market." The veteran didn't react. He just continued eating his meal, his weathered hands steady as he cut his meatloaf. But I could see something in his eyes. Not fear, not anger, but a deep sadness that someone would mock something so sacred. The situation escalated quickly. The biker leader swaggered over to the veteran's table and slammed his hand down, making the silverware jump. "Hey, old man," he said, loud enough for the entire diner to hear. "Where'd you really get that medal? The costume shop?" His buddies erupted in laughter, slapping their knees like it was the funniest thing they'd ever heard. The veteran looked up slowly, his blue eyes meeting the biker's stare. "Afghanistan," he said quietly. 2003. Lost 3 of my brothers that day. But instead of backing down, the biker doubled down on his mockery. "Sure you did, Pops, and I'm the King of England." More laughter from his crew. "Tell you what, why don't you take that fake medal off before someone calls you out for stolen valor?" That's when something inside me snapped. Now, I'm not usually the type to get involved in other people's business, but as a man who was raised to respect our veterans, I was about to stand up when I noticed the veteran reaching for his phone. His fingers moved with surprising speed for someone his age, typing what looked like a quick text message. Then he set the phone down and looked back at his tormentor. 25 minutes, he said calmly. What's that supposed to mean, old-timer? The biker laughed. 25 minutes, and you'll understand exactly how real this medal is. The biker shook his head and returned to his table, continuing to make jokes at the veteran's expense. The poor man just sat there, taking it all, but there was something in his demeanor that had changed. He wasn't defeated. He was waiting. I found myself checking my watch obsessively. What was going to happen in 25 minutes? Was someone coming to pick up the veteran? Was he calling the police? The uncertainty was killing me, but I couldn't bring myself to leave. Something told me I needed to witness whatever was about to unfold. 20 minutes passed. The bikers were still carrying on, getting louder and more obnoxious by the minute. They'd moved on from mocking the veteran to bothering other customers, demanding to know why everyone was so quiet, why nobody was laughing at their jokes. 23 minutes, I heard the rumble before I saw anything. It started as a low, distant thunder that seemed to shake the very foundations of the diner. Conversation stopped. Even the bikers paused their harassment to look around. 24 minutes. The rumble was getting closer, and it wasn't the sound of motorcycles. It was deeper, more powerful, more intimidating. Through the window, I could see dust clouds rising in the distance. 25 minutes exactly. That's when the parking lot erupted into controlled chaos. 6 military vehicles rolled in like they owned the place. Humvees and trucks bearing the unmistakable insignia of the 75th Ranger Regiment. The same unit that had produced legends like those who fought at Pointe du Hoc in Somalia and in countless classified operations around the world. These weren't just any soldiers. These were Army Rangers, the elite of the elite. The doors of those vehicles opened, and out stepped 24 of the most intimidating warriors I've ever seen in my life. They moved with precision, purpose, and an aura of controlled violence that made the air itself feel electric. Each one was built like a gladiator, wearing civilian clothes, but carrying themselves with military bearing that was unmistakable. The lead ranger, a mountain of a man with arms like tree trunks and eyes like steel, walked straight through the diner's front door. His gaze swept the room until it landed on the veteran in the corner booth. Then, in a voice that commanded absolute respect, he spoke. "Sergeant First Class Michael Rodriguez." The veteran stood up slowly, a smile spreading across his weathered face for the first time all afternoon. "That's me, son. Sir, we heard someone was disrespecting one of our own. We came as soon as we got your message." The transformation in the diner was immediate and absolute. The cocky bikers who had been so loud and obnoxious just moments before now looked like they wanted to disappear into the floor. The leader, the same guy who had been calling the Purple Heart fake, had gone completely pale. The ranger turned to face the bikers, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of authority earned through blood, sweat, and sacrifice. "Gentlemen, I believe you owe Sergeant Rodriguez an apology. You see that fake medal you've been mocking? He earned it when an IED tore through his convoy in Kandahar province. He pulled 2 wounded soldiers to safety while taking shrapnel in his own back and legs. He's got more courage in his pinky finger than all of you combined." But the ranger wasn't done. "You want to know something else about Sergeant Rodriguez? He trained half the rangers in this room. He's the reason some of them made it home to their families. So when you disrespect him, you disrespect all of us." The silence in that diner was deafening. You could have heard a pin drop on the worn linoleum floor. The bikers were looking anywhere but at the Rangers, their earlier bravado completely evaporated. One by one, each Ranger approached Sergeant Rodriguez. They shook his hand, some gave him brief hugs, and I heard whispered words of, "Thank you, Sergeant," and "Honor to serve with you, sir." It was like watching a reunion of brothers who had been separated by time, but connected by bonds stronger than blood. The biker leader finally found his voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. We didn't know. We're sorry." Sergeant Rodriguez looked at him for a long moment, then extended his hand. "Apology accepted. Just remember, before you judge someone, take a moment to understand their story. This medal represents sacrifice, not just mine, but the ultimate sacrifice of 3 good men who didn't make it home." The Rangers stayed for about an hour, sharing coffee and stories with their former instructor. I learned that Sergeant Rodriguez had served 3 tours in Afghanistan, had been wounded twice, and had dedicated his post-military life to helping other veterans transition to civilian life. The medal he wore wasn't just a piece of metal. It was a symbol of sacrifice, courage, and brotherhood that most of us will never fully understand. As the Rangers prepared to leave, their leader approached the biker table one more time. "Gentlemen," he said, his tone now more educational than threatening, "let this be a lesson. When you see a veteran, especially one wearing decorations like the Purple Heart, you're looking at someone who wrote a blank check to America, payable up to and including their life. They deserve your respect, not your mockery." The bikers nodded solemnly, their earlier arrogance completely replaced by what looked like genuine shame and newfound respect. Before they left, I watched as several Rangers exchanged contact information with Sergeant Rodriguez, promising to stay in touch and inviting him to upcoming unit reunions. The bond between these warriors was obvious and beautiful to witness. As the military vehicles pulled out of the parking lot, the diner slowly returned to its normal rhythm. But something had fundamentally changed in that space. The bikers quietly finished their meals and left generous tips. Other customers approached Sergeant Rodriguez to thank him for his service. The entire atmosphere had shifted from tension to reverence. I found myself thinking about what I had just witnessed. In our divided world, where people seem to look for reasons to fight and disrespect each other, here was a perfect example of brotherhood, loyalty, and standing up for what's right. Those Rangers didn't have to come. They could have ignored their former instructor's text. But they didn't, because some bonds can never be broken. The story spread through Killeen like wildfire. Within days, everyone knew about what had happened at Mel's Country Diner. The local newspaper picked it up, then regional news outlets, and eventually it became one of those feel-good stories that reminds America why we honor our veterans. But for me, the real lesson wasn't about military brotherhood, though that was beautiful to witness. It was about respect, dignity, and understanding that every person has a story worth knowing before we pass judgment. Sergeant Rodriguez could have gotten angry, could have caused a scene, could have let those bikers ruin his day. Instead, he made a simple phone call and let his record speak for itself. That's the power of brotherhood, folks. That's what it means to have someone's back, even decades after serving together. Sergeant Rodriguez wore that Purple Heart not as a badge of honor for himself, but as a memorial to the men who didn't make it home. And those Rangers? They showed up not just for him, but for every veteran who has ever been disrespected or forgotten. If this story moved you, if it reminded you why we need to honor our veterans every single day, then please subscribe to Honor Echoes. Help us share these stories, because our heroes' sacrifices deserve to be remembered, their courage deserves to be celebrated, and their brotherhood deserves to be honored. Hit that subscribe button, share this video, and let's make sure stories like Sergeant Rodriguez's are never forgotten. These men and women earned our respect with their blood, sweat, and sacrifice. The least we can do is remember their stories and pass them on to the next generation. Thank you for watching, and remember, freedom isn't free, but it's worth every sacrifice our heroes have made to preserve it.